So no big deal if you have to skip this because we will have a recording.
All right,
Looks like
it's recording. Cool.
Okay, hey, Kavya, on this Senate or congressional information query, I'm not one on policy, but I've done a fair bit of work and developed applications that have been used by children for attention deficit assessment, for pain distraction, and in a few other smaller areas. But we've got quite a bit of research documenting that we don't see a lot of critical incidents. There is these warnings about kids under 13 not using headsets that manufacturers put on them. I'm not sure if that's a liability protection thing. So if the kid runs around and falls over a table and gets injured, they'll be free from liability. But there isn't any real significant data showing that there isn't any data showing short-term use of VR leads to any visual impairments. That's always the thing with near eye display,
Right.
with a developing visual system. But typically the VR applications that children are engaged in are typically half hour at the most. They're not wearing a headset for 5 hours a day. So there's a lot of these issues I could help and weigh in on a little bit, but I'm not going to be writing policy. And I can provide research papers showing children using this safely. So anyway, that's just my first volley.
That's great. I would love to just keep you FYI, and wherever you see that we're derailing the research-based context or something, and that's not being captured any area, you could just be like, "Hey, this is something important that you should recommend." Would be lovely. Yeah. So Sarah, I know you joined towards the tail end, and Liz, I know Rachel, you want to start out. So either you can start that, or I could start with just context of what I was.
Let's just dive into it, please.
Okay.
Kavya, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay. So just about a couple of weeks ago, XRSI made contact with Senator Markey, who is the Massachusetts senator, and asking them, they're working on a bill. So very first VR AR act that would be published would be in 2021. It will focus on children. So they're asking for billions of research from the government to find out what all could go wrong or not. And so first we petitioned that, we should review your bill. And now there's a different senator who's contacted XRSI, is like, hey, we would like you to not only review that bill, but also an amendment to COPA, which is the only existing really like a holy grail of children protection in the United States. So I was asking, I don't have a policy experience. I'm soliciting this, we have one advisor who's the senior director of NSA, and she has tons of contact in the White House, everywhere. So she's a lawyer. So she would advise. And then there is Dennis Benea, who is the chair of the working group for privacy safety. He's going to advise on that. If there are anybody that can potentially help advise on this aspect, would be great. I would just, even if just like Skip said, I can point you to a couple of things. I'm not going to write policy for you. That's great, because even that knowledge going into that bill for the entire nation is super helpful.
Hey, Kavya.
Hey.
I've got some experience in drafting comments on, for example, FDA proposals and things like that. So if you're looking for support writing or editing the documents, I could certainly do that. So
Great. I'll definitely add you both as FYI. And Valentino, maybe I could add you as FYI, because maybe we are preparing something that could come in handy on the EU side as well when we work on these things. Plus, ICO UK has put together age-appropriate design measures. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like in September 1st, they're enforcing what is called the Child Act, something like that. Special Child Act or something. And so this is all happening in this year. Massive emphasis towards children's safety. And I'm not surprised. We kind of saw that. That's why we're like, okay, we need to branch out child safety initiative, really need to focus on that. So glad that I was able to foresee all these coming, and we're here. But there are several new faces. Rachel, shall we do a quick intro?
Certainly.
Even though I know that everybody kind of knows most of these people in the industry, but it's so fun to just like do a recap. Let's start with you.
So Rachel Michelson, I've been with XRSI for a year, and I'm the lead of the council, and I'm very humbled to be the lead of this amazing group. So usually new requests go through me and get dispatched to the appropriate experts when necessary.
Yeah. Rachel just celebrated her 50th birthday, and I know Rachel doesn't like to disclose, but I have her permission to share with you. She does have multiple sclerosis. Half of her body does not, operate so effectively yet. In 1 year, she has done so much putting all this council together, and we're about to land, cross fingers, our first grant. So thank you, Rachel. You are awesome, and I applaud.
Oh, I love this. I absolutely do. It brings sanity to my day. This work.
That's so great. Thank you. Skip, if you want to go next.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Skip Rizzo, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been working in VR for a few years, and I direct what's called the Medical Virtual Reality Lab at USC's Institute for Creative Technologies. And basically, our work has revolved around pretty much all areas that we've been able to get funding for in mental health and rehab, psych efforts, cognitive efforts, motor, physical, and occupational therapy, game-based stuff, and some work with virtual human interaction for different clinical purposes as well.
Awesome. Valentino?
So I'm Valentino Megale. I'm speaking from Italy. I'm the CEO of Softcare Studios. So we are a private company working to support patients during hospitalization with virtual reality, with a special focus on stress management and therapy education. And we exactly started with a core on pediatrics with our first project, Tommy, that we are now distributing in Italy. So it's great to be part of the XRSI and see every one of you after our past meetings in different events.
And Valentino is actually helping us lead the child safety subgroup for an ongoing effort for XRSI Privacy and Safety Framework. So thank you, Valentino. Richard.
Thank you.
Sorry, not used to Zoom. I couldn't find my unmute button. Hi, everyone. Richard Price. I work in the NHS in England as the Learning Technologies Advisor. So we support the education and training of everyone that works in healthcare in the UK. So about 1.2 million people. And increasingly, over the past year, that's meant using VR, AR, mixed reality devices and things like that. So been great to be sort of an official partner now of the XRSI.
Right. I'm going to nominate Sarah next. Thank you, Richard.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah Tico. I'm the founder of Hatsumi, and we've been developing a body mapping tool to help people express the embodied experience of pain and emotion using 3D drawing. I also work on Explore Deep, which is a breath-controlled VR experience. But I'm spending a lot of time working closely with people like Richard at Health Education England, and we're currently developing a white paper report to develop a united strategy for VR in healthcare here in the UK. Oh, I'm very excited that XRSI are part of it as well, and I need to get back to you about that section as well. But it's the end of the day and my brain is already down.
Yeah. We're just grateful that you roped us in, and I think this is going to work out great. This is just the foundation, so there's many, many years of work to come together. So I'm so glad.
Yes, I think I'm just starting to come to terms with how much more work there is to do on that.
Right?
Yeah, very exciting.
All right, Walter.
Well, I love the fact that Skip said he's been working in VR for a few years, because I happen to know that we started Skip back in the early 90s working together, so at least 30 years. And we both have the high foreheads from wearing all the HMDs to prove it. So, that's one more occupational hazard to keep in mind. I'm
I'm basically a research scientist, a behavioral neuroscientist, working at Stanford University as my home base. But I, like Skip, I've been working in medical VR for decades. I'm very active right now, working with seed stage and Series A stage medical product development companies. I also work with a large pharma company and a large medical device company that are moving forward into VR, and one large healthcare network, United Health Group, and insurance company that's there. So, trying to weave the ecosystem together. Bob Fine and I collaborate on that with a shared passion, and happy to be here because the work of this group is so important.
Thank you, Walter. And Ryan. Ryan's actually a newbie here, the first time joining our council. So there we go.
Thanks. So yeah, I have a small startup that's working with Children's Hospital doing vision assessment. So we're using VR to do measure strabismus and amblyopia in children and some adults. And we've got several studies on the go right now with the Children's Hospital there. And but more to the point, I'm spending a lot of time learning about how research and medical assessment is conducted in general. And then through that, I've developed a patent pending platform that would basically enable medical assessment and research in VR in a consistent, solid way that gives the maximum amount of data consistently. And we're starting with vision, but we'd like to extend the use of the platform to, any other type of assessment that you can do or research you can want to do with VR, and then have kind of a consistent means of recording and presenting data in VR scientifically. So, whether we'd like to make that open and have it available to everyone to use. And so joining XRSI was a natural step for us because the vision was really to get open and consistent communication between all the different disciplines of medicine. And we really see VR as potentially a way to solve a long-standing problem in the medical space, which has been that, practices are siloed and don't really intercommunicate or interoperate with each other, unlike the natural systems in the body, which all interoperate with each other constantly and inform each other. So we think that VR might be a great opportunity to fix that major problem. And so my interest in XRSI is specifically around that. And my background is 25 years experience doing designing architectures for learning management systems to deploy to major corporations. So I've done stuff with Deloitte and Caterpillar and Apple and stuff like that. So I'm excited to be able to apply that experience to the medical field and kind of organize information and create an architecture and a taxonomy that would be useful for everyone doing assessment and research.
And what caught my eye was the Second Life work as well. So Ryan,
Yes.
we worked with, right? So we never crossed paths, but we apparently worked for the same company, the oldest existing virtual world. But you did cooler things, I think.
Well, back in 2006, I was part of the grid architecture working group. So we were just talking platform architecture and taxonomy.
Did you see the Nike shoes that were the crasher shoes? Because there were so many polygons, and then every time it would go to an island, it would just crash, and it was such a trol shoe. Just do it. I don't know if you know, but yeah.
Not those specifically, but there was a lot of those objects.
Yeah.
The objects, but yeah.
Very cool. Good to have you, Ryan. And Ryan is agreed to sort of be a part of this core team, which I'm going to talk about briefly, but sort of input to all the concerns that he has, maybe help us lead the medical XR side of the privacy safety framework. Well, I'll talk about it in a bit. Liz, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I'm the project manager for this council. So I'm furiously taking notes in the background. As of until 2 days ago, I was an ethical hacker at Deloitte. I'm going to RSM to lead their penetration testing practice.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Thank you. And my interest in XRSI is I have a degree in biochemistry, and I also worked at a small virtual reality startup a couple years ago. So it just combines everything that I like together.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Thanks for being here, and thank you for all the help. Things have been absolutely a little bit smoother. So thank you. Bob.
Sorry, hey, Bob Fine, Executive Director of IVRA, International VR and Healthcare Association. As always, just happy to help out any way I can and support, individual projects and Kavya here as well. Kavya, if I can make one ask regarding your the policy request you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you try to just summarize that in an email, either bullets or paragraph? It'll be a little bit easier to kind of take a focused look at later and try to connect any dots possibly.
Totally. I can even supply to you the 2 draft documents that they have sent. And so the amendment to COPA and then the other bill. And I just have to cross compare. The act that I was discussing with Senator Markey was called the CAMRA Act, CAMRA, but this one is called Kids Privacy Act. So I have 3 documentation. So as soon as I synthesize this, I will share with you for sure.
Okay. And one thing, just keep in mind, since I am in downtown DC, if it ever makes sense to try to corral some folks together for a virtual conference, let me know.
We totally should. In fact, Bob, it would be great if you could bring Delbene and a bunch of other folks to talk about medical XR, because the people who are actually reaching out to these BPC bipartisan committee, as well as the Reality Caucus, which is led by Delbene, they are XRA, no offense, but they still represent the interest of massive corporations and not the interest of what we advocate for.
Yeah, I'm still confused about this Reality Caucus versus the other caucus that was created a couple years ago with some House of Reps. I don't know if this is anyway. It would be good to try to figure out if that's still active or not, and understand why they're not. Are they working together or not?
Gotcha. Yeah. Let's for sure. On the DC side, I'll definitely keep you in the loop. But at some point, we really should maybe make it virtual reality day stuff. Who knows? We should talk about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, again, like I think I mentioned to you in a call before, and I've mentioned, Walter and I talked about this. One of the goals I'd like to try to achieve this year, maybe for the fall or late summer, is organizing a VR show and tell, for congressional staffers, any members of Congress that want to learn, with maybe a strong emphasis on healthcare. But I think we can probably get other lobbying groups and even like organizations like United Healthcare and others involved in that. That could be around VR Day or something like that too. So
that's a brilliant idea, because why wait until they're going to drop some kind of law? We should try to bring them to the technology table and help them learn. That's a brilliant idea.
I bet many of them have not had a good VR experience.
I
probably
imagine.
mobile VR, if anything.
Probably Google Cardboard is it. So.
Yeah. And then they probably even don't still understand what is the difference between AR or MR or VR. It's like everything is whatever. So
I still don't understand the difference, but so they're probably even more naive.
Just one more quick background. So when the reality or when the VR caucus, at least the one in the House, was announced a couple years ago, I have had contacts with all their offices, because I've tried to get one of them to be a presenter at one of the past conferences. Extremely hard to do that, but I've got some staffer emails that I can, whether they're still there or not, I'd have to check. I haven't probably communicated for a year, but just letting you know that.
For sure. You know, Bob, I don't want to petition it now, but I was really hoping that next year when you do your conference, I should be your co-host because I'm tired of seeing all you dudes being the host. So I'm just going to drop that out there, or some female, you know. You have such a wonderful conference. It would be nice to have like a bit more diverse face as the leading voice. And no objection against
I,
what you do,
just
but
in
I'm
a, in
like,
a,
let's colorify it a little bit.
Well, there's a
I've always
lot.
tried to make it
You've
very,
had a lot of women as co-hosts, Bob, over the years.
yeah, I mean, I've tried very, very hard to make it. I think it's been very gender diverse for sure.
Yes.
It's really hard that, I mean, I'll be very frank on the ethnicity side and having diversity there. It is really difficult. It's just not. It's hard to find the people that are doing it, and it's unfortunately a very small percentage. But I'm always open to that and always have been. So.
Yeah, no, that's why I was like, before I bring up the problem, I'm going to give you the solution. I could be that person. And yeah, we could talk about it. But
Oh, definitely.
yeah,
We got a long list of stuff to go over. So.
exactly. All right, Mark.
Sure. Hi, Mark Linebeck. I'm actually recently retired from Underwriters Laboratories, but basically functioning in a role of being a consultant for medical device manufacturers, ensuring regulatory compliance, and primarily in the area of risk management. And I think that's largely why I was asked to this group, is because the risk management concepts apply regardless of what the device is, whether it's a virtual reality device or any of the other devices that medical devices that may be out there. So I've got quite a bit of experience in working with a variety of medical devices, including like in vitro diagnostic devices. And also in the process of standards development. I've been a member of numerous International Electrotechnical Commission committees, as well as ISO committees, and in particular, a member of the committee responsible for the risk management standard for medical devices. So I've got a little bit of background too with the software side of things too. Number of years ago, I did some development of decision trees and Oracle for some corporate implementations when we were implementing Oracle within the organization. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. And Mark and Ryan together are sort of, internally with XRSI trying to put some foundation for the framework that I'm just about to talk about. So with your permission, Rachel, can I go ahead? Okay. So this is the purpose today, just to like inform you all that based on the previous guidance, we've started to do the work to potentially roll out what would be seen as in the future. This is not this is just an original slide deck, but potentially would be seen as the XRSI framework, privacy and safety framework for medical XR domain. So very specific to medical domain. Why I'm displaying this slide is because this is a work that is currently ongoing. Most of you are familiar with it. At the moment, we are here. And so on 31st March, we'll just stop this content curation. We'll slice and dice whatever we got, the research and everything. I know lots of you have submitted contents. We've got content from HEE. We've received content from USKIP, and Valentino's contributed heavily. And so with this, we'll go into editing and design, launch the general sort of a framework for the entire XR and spatial computing. And then basically right after that, we'll send this to Department of Justice. I'm in direct contact with them. They are, we are all under NDA. They contacted me to probe Oculus. And so that's like a thing that started pre-US presidential election, and it's ongoing. We don't know what the outcome is, when they're gonna come out with this, but we will send it to them. We'll send it to FTC. We'll send it to all the data protection agencies. So there is an actual outreach operations person who's literally just like collecting all these contacts and stuff. Send it to anybody who needs to be aware of this, but mostly governments, all the governments that we can find. We have a few advisors who work in the cybersecurity side have interfaced with over like 22 governments and with their direct liaison who work in the computer emergency response team. So hopefully that will create us a good, avenue to reach out. So that's the plan. But as soon as we launch this in May, we are thinking about then starting the medical XR effort. Currently, this framework, as you can see, the project goal was like, hey, let's involve the community and solicit from them what looks like the privacy and safety framework, because legal assessment informed us that it's not just privacy, it's privacy and safety. So apparently it is under these like 4 pillars. There is a heavy emphasis on prevention, not just protection. And then there's these deliberate considerations such as special data type consideration. I just got in contact with iMotion. So we are going to meet with them about some of the data. Then University of Cambridge, they are literally, question of, they're trying to address who watches the watcher. So like trying to analyze what is really going on in the technical side of things in the VR and AR. So let's say if a crime happens in VR or AR, if pixels and the bits and bytes is the truth, how would we forensically determine the truth? So that's another project they're working on that involves lots of these special data type consideration. They just don't know what to do with all this data. They've got it. So they want to talk to us and see like, whether we can kind of standardize some of those things that they're working with. And then this harm prevention is all about like, proactive, proactive measures to prevent harm. Everybody sort of agreed that, let's focus on XR and not separated AR, VR. This is what these kind of controls look like. So if there is a child safety aspect, it goes granular into, hey, have parental guidance, hey, have these things. But this time, last time, we didn't focus on age appropriate design or anything else. We were just like, hey, just inform parents, inform children. So in this iteration, based on the ICO guidance and based on all this new work that is going on, there is a special emphasis on child safety, and we'll see like how that plays out, and not just in the inform area, but there will be controls that will be rolled out in all these 4 focus areas, hopefully. So right now we're asking nonprofits, universities, governments, research labs to provide their logo and any contribution for free. This is absolutely for free. They can just like, hey, we support you, we provide you whatever resources, that's great. We have at least 4 or 5 universities that are actively working on this. University of Michigan has already delivered whatever they wanted to, huge chunk of research on the inform side, which is something to do with context, control, and choice. It's going to be remarkable. And one of their students is working on a thesis, which he wants to spin into a long-term project towards testing the efficacy of XRSI framework. And more specifically, he's testing just the inform piece right here. So context, control, choice, how does informed consent proposed by XRSI framework, is it effective? Is it going to work out? So starting from the ground level, and it will continue hopefully as we iterate more. So why the medical XR? So in past few days, so just like you saw the 4 focus areas here, in the past few days, Mark and Ryan and Rachel, all of us have been meeting to try to come up with what could be a potential scope for when we do this for medical XR. It could be very, very similar, where we assign 4 different focus areas, and then underneath we come up with what are the potential, other functions that we should care about. And so at the moment, and I'm just pulling up a really very basic draft document, but this is what we are thinking about: govern, assess the risk, which would be heavy on like a risk analysis. And this is all like a lot of work from Mark and Ryan both. Then how do you mitigate risk control? And then, sort of a continuous review or monitoring. Those are the 4 pillars so far, but all in draft stage. So before the kickoff on May 1st, we want to have our head wraps around this, like, what are the function areas? What are the main areas that we could handle? And then we can keep going into, building these processes. so that when we bring in the community or the people into this, participation, the community effort, we have some groundwork, we have some guidance, and we can lead them. Rachel and, Mark and Ryan have agreed to kind of lead this working group. So May we will start. And December happens to be XR Safety Week. So hopefully by that time, we may have a couple of case studies that we have done against it and around it. We may have some contracts that may have materialized, building trust and safety rating mechanism. So that's a parallel conversation with a couple of entities, entities like ul.com, I would say. We'll see if those conversations materialize, we bring it all together, then we may be able to give to the industry a toolkit, which we would code it so that, you can go in like, oh, how many people you are, what's the scope of the thing. So we'll code it in such a way. So it won't be just like a PDF or Excel sheet. It could really be a toolkit that Medical XR Advisory Council blesses, approves, and then we'll do the same thing, outreach to FTC, DOJ, DPAs, whatever else. So that's the game plan. And so I just want to shut up now and open it to the council about thoughts around this effort. Let's start with Walter.
Well, just specifically for the risk evaluation part of healthcare, I think the new Center for Digital Health at the FDA has a very elaborate algorithms on how to do a health-related risk assessment of a digital system. And so I think I would look very closely at their public information about how they deem a device not to be risky. And it's not just, the physical parameters, but they have a strong interest in children, protecting children. So I think there's already elaborated framework for risk assessment for medical systems that we can take a close look at.
Hey, Mark, do you want to speak to that as to how granular we are going there? Because I know that you are making some of those considerations.
Sure, and just it's important to understand that the FDA actually has, which the group that you just described is a part of, and one of the recognized consensus standards that they use for managing risk, which includes obviously risk assessment is just part of it. But the recognized consensus standard by the FDA is, in fact, the ISO 14971 risk management standard that I was a member of, the committee that I was a member of. So I think that the work and the structure, the basic outline that Kavya was just showing, that basically follows that framework, and I think adds a little bit to
That's
it.
Great.
So, yeah,
that's great.
So,
okay, good. I hadn't been aware that you had already been embedded within the belly of the beast and were able to, bring forward, your understanding and knowledge of that. I was worried that we didn't know that something like that was there. So fantastic. That's great.
Totally
Sure.
fair point. And Rachel, I know you're part of some working group as well that's working closely with FDA, some kind of FDA working group. What's that one?
So that was cybersecurity centered. So it's not directly privacy, but they just had MITRE together with the FDA just had a training session for cybersecurity, for risk management for cybersecurity, that they're planning to turn into a manual for manufacturers. That was very exciting.
Very cool.
So I had the honor of being a student there. They pick 100 people, and I made the list. And it's our experience is going to be turned into a manual.
Yeah, there is a high likelihood at some point we might even work with MITRE, because when things go wrong with these devices, or whether they would go wrong or not, the cyber attacks are all just like the ratings of cyber attacks are assigned by MITRE. So I think we're going to definitely work with them. I'm actually meeting with Sam Wissner, who is actually one of the heads of MITRE. But the reason why I'm meeting with him, because they formed a Space Force information exchange sharing, like a threat intelligence exchange. And they're now using virtual reality to train astronauts or the likes for some simulation training. So I'm like, we should talk, because there could be some things that you might want to know. So let's see what comes out of it. Cool. Skip, I wonder if you have some opinions on it or thoughts on it.
I don't think that's really my area of expertise. I wouldn't want to weigh in beyond what, people that have expertise in FDA matters. I follow it tangentially. I try to keep up as best I can, but I don't think I really would be.
Right. Yeah, no, that was the initial agreement too, because some of you have so busy schedule. Most what we ask is just nudge, direction, strategy, look here, look there. Oh, this could be turned into a grant. What are you doing? That kind of stuff is more than enough. So I wonder, Sarah, from your perspective, I know we've had this conversation before too, but what the value, the outcome, and just your involvement as well, how deeply would you want to stay involved or just want to be a reviewer of it?
I am happy to keep on reviewing. I think I'm learning a lot about this process as I go as well. I think especially with the work that Richard and I have been doing lately with starting to speak to NHSX and understanding how their policies work is a really helpful process at the moment. But I think what we're starting to learn is that there are these sort of large government strategies for how health technology is used and these specific use cases, but it's not relevant to VR. And so what we're doing at the moment is, I guess, having these conversations, starting to make sense of these policies and then work out how to adapt them. So I don't know if I necessarily have the full expertise to be able to advise, but I can definitely keep on talking and sort of share what I'm learning along the way as well.
One ask, which is a major ask, and I know you can do it, is connecting the people who are related, relevant, who should know that we're working on it. Anybody in the industry should know that we're working on this medical XR thing. And that, for that matter, we're going to separately meet with Bob and sort of figure out how do we tell IVRA members and invite them into this sort of a evaluation or collaboration. And especially when it comes to use cases, we can't accept the mental health use case evaluation. At least that's my understanding. But there could be other use cases that are just easy to demonstrate the privacy and safety aspect with respect to data. So that's something to think about, and there's plenty of time still. We can, definitely talk.
Do you mean demonstrating how data is managed safely within specific use cases then, or?
I would defer to Mark. Mark, how are we going to approach the use case evaluation or analysis?
Well, I think that's really going to be up to us, what we want to do and how we want to do it. But I think the idea was just basically to take the framework that we had and try to come up with an example that would illustrate all of the various pieces and how they tie together, and basically forms a continuous iterative process. So that we understand that as we develop these risk controls, that it's not a one-shot deal. You got to continue and monitor what happens in the field and make adjustments as you go. So we'd like to get I think some use cases that would ideally allow us to illustrate as many aspects as we could, because there's both safety and privacy aspects to that. And I think for the compliance group, I was going to starting to work on trying to draft up a paper that touches on some of the areas where there can be a conflict between the two, because you may have, for example, privacy concerns about your information becoming available, but that at the same time it may be important to capture that data because it may also help to prevent additional harm. So if you have a progressive disease, for example, then you're going to want to actually capture that data. Like if you're capturing eye movement or tremor or something like that, you can see in the very early stages that something is happening. If you say, oh, no, that's privacy information, you can't retain that. Well, that may be in the short term that may impact the privacy, but in the long term, you may misdiagnose or fail to diagnose an otherwise treatable condition. So I think that's really kind of the use cases that we want to hit on, is to see where we can identify those situations where privacy and safety can be in conflict.
Makes sense, Sarah. So basically just, being able to evaluate whatever use case, whatever your company, your product, your service, maybe a feature or functionality against the framework that we'll build. So to demonstrate that we're not just like doing theoretical talk here or just handing out a bunch of checklists, it's actually effective. And this is how it supports the company. And whoever out of like so many hundreds of medical XR companies, I already have a few people who are like, hey, can we be your guinea pig? But since they were medical XR, they couldn't be eligible. And also, I feel like mental health one would be a really hard one to sort of evaluate and put out as the foundational. So we'll probably prefer some other, but it's like TBD. I don't know what we are evaluating yet. So once we get there, those decisions will be made.
Can we get a little more concrete in terms of a specific use case where this would come up? Because that might help me clarify my thinking anyway. I mean, I think about privacy and safety as, things you have to consider, and particularly with some of our previous work with online intelligent healthcare support agents, where it's always pitched as a safe, private, anonymous place to interact and get information and self-explore and so on. But, in the course of building that, people always said, what if somebody, says they're ready to kill themselves? We've always deferred to the idea of keeping it anonymous rather than, 10 minutes later, the EMTs are banging down the door. So that would be one use case that we've struggled with, where these patient safety, but privacy trumps the potential for an unsafe outcome if you don't act.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, seems like you ethical dilemma at that point. I am not familiar how you would address that. But
Yeah, Kavya,
yeah, go
that's
ahead,
that's
Mark.
actually, that's the benefit identification purpose, or in this under the assess. That's why we included something about benefit as well, because there is one of the things that I've seen is that you can get things in conflict, and so you need to understand not only what is the risk, but also what is the benefit. Because that's going to help to start to make an overall assessment about whether the device should be used, or what's going to trump what. And if you don't know what the benefit of a device is, because like a lot of the organizations that I've seen, they focus entirely on risk and don't really think about the clinical condition that's being treated and the benefits of that whatever that device happens to be and what it's going to be used for. And so therefore understanding both the risks as well as the benefits, I think, is key to making those sorts of analyses.
That's excellent. What kind of use cases would be ideal, Mark, if we were to? Because I know Bob's here and he knows so many of these organizations, and we have this later conversation to talk about an approach to include them. But I wonder if that would be a useful context to provide.
Yeah, and this is where again, my background is primarily on the medical device side, and doing risk management for a variety of different devices, and so I'm going to be learning from the group as far as the VR, what might be an appropriate sort of situation for the discussion today. Some of the things that I was thinking about is if you're doing simulations, for example, like one of the devices, one of the very high-risk medical devices that's out there is infusion pumps. And there's a long history of human factors issues associated with people interacting with an infusion pump incorrectly, which has resulted in many patient fatalities. And so if one were to do, one of the expectations is that staff would be trained on the use of an infusion pump. And so in so doing, they're going to learn how to operate the device as intended, and so prevent any sort of potential patient adverse events. And so therefore, I was thinking of an infusion pump example, and there is some privacy risk associated with it, because whenever people are trained on something, their performance is being observed. And so, that the actual performance of that how they do could be something that would be appropriate to normally manage, or control. It's considered private information. But at the same time, if you find that somebody is, not able to interact with the device successfully, then, isn't that something that's, that needs to be made known in some way? Because again, if a patient or if a nurse practitioner interacts incorrectly with that medical device and results in an overinfusion or an underinfusion, that can be fatal. So that's an example of an area where, I think there's a tension between both the privacy side as well as the safety side. So just a couple thoughts.
Yeah. Ryan, do you want to add to that perspective as to what could be the ideal potential use case in your mind as we're building this?
Yeah, so in the area of research and research ethics, I think there's a lot of, there is existing framework that we can use to be informed by research ethics. It's pretty well trodden, very well documented area. And there's constantly ethical reviews going on for different research projects, obviously. So there's a lot of rich information out there that we can mine to help us do a couple different things. One is we can define special kinds of data or special kinds of privacy rules around projects that are focused on research, because obviously data sharing is critical for research to occur, where, as we were talking about the benefits, small uses of maybe bridging privacy under an ethical framework would enable, a benefit to society that could be significant. So this is a use case that I think is considerable, because as you and I discussed, one of the major issues with research among practicing clinicians in clinics and hospitals, when they're university hospitals in particular, like what we have here where I live, is just, the blockages of sharing data for in a lot of cases, no good reason other than there's just no good privacy policy or no consistent privacy policy between departments. So having a policy that's well documented and has been weighed in on by, as many stakeholders as possible from industry, a hospital would be confident in adopting that. And I think it would be a lifesaver in a lot of cases, because you would have the ability for data to now go from one department to another department, when before there was just a wall because no one knew, that no one wanted to take a risk. So so I think, this is a little bit of a eggshells area. We have to be careful as we approach this, but I think with all the stakeholders we have here and all the expertise, we have a really good chance of getting this right. So I'm pretty excited about that use case.
Very cool. And that was a use case that I just didn't think about. But when I spoke with Ryan, because some of these silos, this is like the other extreme. It's like, oh, we want to be private and don't share this data. That's almost stupid, because if you don't share the data, you're just like, like bad rules around data sharing, not a good excuse except for legal said so. So we have to be really careful in structuring this so that we don't incur any legal liabilities because we told them to share the data. So we would have to be really, really careful in how we word these recommendations. Because if we inform them and they make their policy as such, then we may be liable if something really goes wrong. So we'll be kind of cognizant of that. I don't know what else to sort of discuss in this piece, but one area that I want to call out is we received a whole lot of documentation from HEE. Richard Abison and Neil had sent some documentation. So I believe that would be like here somewhere where you do risk control or risk management by using training as the tool to control risk, right? The training and awareness would be a way to manage risk. And that would be something that fits in here. And since they have already been sort of standardizing how to conduct these things in VR or in MR, I think that could kind of fit in right here. And maybe not in the general one, because this general one doesn't directly speak to medical XR use case. So I'm thinking all the stuff that we receive from HEE would rather fit into the medical XR context, because that's what it really speaks to. You know, I'll share all of that. Rachel, you've seen it. Mark, you've seen all the documentation that we received from HEE, right? And you're muted.
Sorry, not recently. I remember a while ago, but was there
Yeah.
something recently?
Not recently, but that was the
Okay,
same
then I
call
have
that I
that.
had with Abison. Yeah, but I'm going to request all that like formal documentation, because that was just like an overview or something.
Yeah,
But
we
yeah.
can provide all that. So yeah, shouldn't be a problem. I think you're right. It probably does sit within this area, but I think there's two elements to the risk. There's the risk reduction in terms of overall training and mitigating that risk of delivery of by delivering training, you're upskilling your workforce and reducing the risk to the patient at the end. But I think there's also something about the governance risks and things. This is I suppose, the slightly boring bit, I guess, but making sure you've got consent, making sure you've got support, you're sort of meeting your privacy guidelines around sharing content that's recorded on a HoloLens, for example, or something, if there's people in shot and things like that. So there are some immediate challenges we need to address as well. And the other thing that we're increasingly coming across at the moment is lived experiences. And the risk associated with that. So I think that's worth reflecting on somewhere in this document, just because we're doing some work, for example, with return to training. So these are doctors that have left the profession and are coming back and are on a sort of fast track to get revalidated, requalified. And they have a real fear of going back into some of the situations that they've been in, because they've left for a reason sometimes, and putting them into a virtual reality experience where they're having to deal with a traumatic experience or something can be quite traumatic for them, because it's sort of bringing back that lived experience. So I'd be keen to sort of capture that somewhere within this document as well, just to say that that's something we've considered.
Totally. Yeah. Yep. All right. I think I'm good, Rachel, if you want to wrap, or, there are other elements. I'm sorry I took so much time, but I think this was really important. This is the foundation. And every week, if, we would provide like a 15-minute update not every week, but every council meeting, we'll definitely provide. And whenever that kickoff is, I'm going to work with Bob. Anybody else has anyone that they want to invite to the kickoff? For the general one, we sent 1,000 invites. 600 people said yes. About 200 plus are actively working on this thing. So it's great. As many people as we can reach, we can influence, we can make a positive difference.
Thank you, Kavya. So we didn't get to our second agenda item, unfortunately, which was Mark showing us how to search the FDA databases and how to use that as a basis for risk management. So that, unfortunately, will move to the next time or the time after that, whenever we have time. So let's wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Does anybody have any other things that we should talk about in the remaining 4 minutes?
Thanks for including me. Well, it's a very interesting discussion here. I think as I learn more about the workings of this group, hopefully I'll be able to contribute more.
Oh my God. I hope and I know I'm speaking for every single person here. This could not be done without you, Skip. So we were so thrilled. And your recommendation came from Walter. Like the first time we spoke, he was like, you got to get Skip. He's got to be in this table. So thank you so
Walter
much.
has a habit of dragging me into these things for my own good.
That's so great. I'm just honored and humbled. Thank you all.
Just to jump in, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, again, really echo that, and it's just really helpful to be able to connect with everyone and just find out what's going on in all the different parts of the globe. I just wanted to flag that we haven't nailed down a date, but in mid-May, then we'll be looking to launch this NHS XR report and are hoping to do a sort of day-long event where we can talk about all the different work that's been going on and sort of bringing together the community to also talk about, well, what happens next and the recommendations that we're giving to NHSX and UKRI, who are part of the sort of government and create sort of innovation funding as well, and thinking about what sort of interdisciplinary collaborations that we can create going forward. So hopefully I have a bit more of an update to share next time, but it would be great to chat to you all about if anyone would be interested in participating in some way as well.
And Sarah, are you advertising that or are you promoting it anywhere?
Yes, we're just in the early stages of planning it at the moment. So we'll obviously be communicating it with you and dragging you into it as well. But yeah, we're just kind of focusing on the report at the moment, but getting the early stages underway.
Excellent.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks,
I know
everyone.
Charles not here, but I know that he would have much to say about this. So we'll gather those comments from people who were not able to attend the meeting afterwards. All right, then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.